Genesis 26 recounts events in the life of Isaac, the son of Abraham. It highlights Isaac's encounters with the Philistines, God's reaffirmation of his covenant, and Isaac's experiences during a time of famine. Here is a summary of the key points. Before we start, we'd like to ask for your support. If you enjoy our video, please hit the like button. This will help us reach more people and create content for you. Now let's get started with today's video. Genesis 26 is a unique chapter within the broader narrative of the patriarchs, focusing primarily on the life of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Isaac is often overshadowed by his father Abraham and his son Jacob in the biblical account. But in this chapter, his story takes center stage, revealing how God continues his covenant promises through Abraham's offspring. The chapter highlights themes of faith, fear, obedience, divine blessing, conflict, and reconciliation. 1. Famine and God's instructions. Genesis 26, 1-6. The chapter begins with a famine in the land, reminiscent of the one that occurred in Abraham's time. Genesis 12:10. This famine compels Isaac to seek refuge in Gerar, the territory of the Philistines, under the rule of Abimelech. Famine was a common occurrence in the ancient Near East and often drove people to migrate in search of food and resources, particularly to regions like Egypt where the Nile provided a stable food supply. Isaac initially intends to go down to Egypt, following the pattern of his father Abraham, who went to Egypt during a similar famine. However, God intervenes and tells Isaac to remain in the land, promising that he will be with him and bless him. God reiterates the covenant he made with Abraham, confirming that Isaac and his descendants will inherit the land of Canaan and that through his offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Genesis 26:4. This divine instruction is significant because it shows that God's promises to Abraham are now being carried forward through Isaac. The covenant includes both land and descendants, and it is based on God's faithfulness, not on human action. God also highlights that these promises are being fulfilled because of Abraham's obedience to his commands, statutes, and laws. Genesis 26, verse 5. This shows the importance of generational faithfulness and how the faith of one person, Abraham, can have lasting effects on future generations. Isaac obeys God's command and stays in Gerar, demonstrating trust in God's provision even in the face of a severe famine. 2. Isaac's deception in Gerar, Genesis 26, 7-11. While in Gerar, Isaac faces a test similar to the one Abraham encountered in both Egypt and Gerar. Fearing for his life, Isaac tells the people of Gerar that his wife Rebekah is his sister, afraid that the men of the city might kill him to take her because of her beauty. This deception mirrors Abraham's earlier actions when he passed off Sarah as his sister to protect himself. Isaac's fear reflects a lack of trust in God's protection, despite the recent reaffirmation of the covenant. He falls into the same pattern of deception as his father, showing that even the patriarchs struggled with fear and faithlessness at times. It is worth noting that the Bible does not shy away from revealing the flaws and failures of its heroes, highlighting the importance of God's grace and faithfulness, even when his people falter. Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, eventually discovers the truth when he sees Isaac and Rebekah behaving in a way that reveals their true relationship as husband and wife. Abimelech confronts Isaac, rebuking him for the deception and expressing concern that someone might have unwittingly sinned by taking Rebekah as a wife. Despite Isaac's failure, Abimelech issues a decree protecting Isaac and Rebekah, ordering his people not to harm them. This episode reveals both the persistence of human sinfulness and the grace of God, who protects Isaac and his family despite their shortcomings. It also reflects the ethical standards of the time, as even a foreign king like Abimelech recognizes the sanctity of marriage and the potential consequences of violating it. 3. Isaac's prosperity and conflict with the Philistines, Genesis 26, 12-22. Following this episode, Isaac begins to prosper greatly. The text tells us that he sowed crops in the land and reaped 100-fold because the Lord blessed him, Genesis 26:12. His wealth increases as he acquires flocks, herds, and servants, making him very prosperous. This rapid increase in wealth and influence causes envy among the Philistines, who react by stopping up the wells that Abraham's servants had dug during his lifetime. Wells were vital in the arid region of Gerar, as they provided access to water for both people and livestock. By filling in the wells, the Philistines sought to limit Isaac's resources and curtail his growing power. This act of hostility reflects the ongoing tension between Isaac and the Philistines, which is rooted in their jealousy of God's blessing on Isaac's life. Abimelech eventually asked Isaac to leave Gerar, saying, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." Genesis 26:16. Despite being asked to leave, Isaac does not retaliate or fight back. Instead, he moves to the valley of Gerar and reopens the wells that had been stopped up by the Philistines. He also digs new wells, but each time he does so, the local herdsmen quarrel with him over the water, leading Isaac to name the wells based on these disputes. Esek, meaning contention, and Sitnah, meaning opposition. Finally, Isaac digs a well at Rehoboth, where there is no opposition. He names the well Rehoboth, meaning room, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land." Genesis 26:22. This episode highlights Isaac's patience and non-confrontational approach to conflict. Rather than fighting over the wells, he chooses to move on and continue trusting in God's provision, confident that God will make room for him in the land. Fourth, God's covenant reaffirmed, Genesis 26:23-25. After these conflicts, Isaac moves to Beersheba, where God appears to him and reaffirms the covenant promises once again. God tells Isaac, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." Genesis 26:24. This divine encounter reassures Isaac that despite the challenges he has faced, God's promises remain sure. Isaac responds by building an altar and calling on the name of the Lord, just as Abraham had done before him. This act of worship signifies Isaac's recognition of God's faithfulness and his desire to remain in relationship with the Lord. 5. The covenant with Abimelech, Genesis 26:26-33. Following Isaac's move to Beersheba, Abimelech comes to him with his advisor and the commander of his army. Isaac is initially suspicious, asking why they have come to him after sending him away. Abimelech responds by acknowledging that they have seen that the Lord was with Isaac, and they wish to make a treaty of peace with him, Genesis 26:28. This acknowledgement by a foreign king reflects the broader theme of God's blessing on Isaac's life. Even those who were once hostile toward him now recognize that God's presence and favor are upon him. Isaac agrees to the treaty, and the two parties make a covenant, sharing a meal together as a sign of peace and mutual understanding. This peaceful resolution is significant in light of the earlier conflicts over the wells. It demonstrates that God's blessing not only brings prosperity, but also leads to reconciliation and peace with others. The chapter concludes with Isaac's servants finding water and digging another well, which he names Sheba. The place is called Beersheba, which means well of the oath or well of seven, commemorating the covenant made between Isaac and Abimelech. 6. Esau's marriage, Genesis 26:34-35. The chapter ends on a somber note mentioning that Esau, Isaac's eldest son, marries two Hittite women, Judith and Basemath. This decision causes grief to Isaac and Rebekah, as these marriages are outside the covenant family and reflect Esau's disregard for the spiritual heritage of his family. This brief mention of Esau's marriages sets the stage for the future conflict between Esau and Jacob, as it highlights Esau's growing estrangement from the covenant promises. His choice of wives contrasts with Isaac's earlier careful selection of Rebekah, which was done with the intention of preserving the covenant line. Conclusion: faith, blessing, and divine protection. Genesis 26 provides a rich narrative of Isaac's life, emphasizing God's faithfulness in the face of human weakness and opposition. Despite Isaac's fears and failures, God remains true to his promises, blessing Isaac with prosperity, protecting him from harm, and reaffirming the covenant made with Abraham. The chapter also highlights the importance of patience, non-retaliation, and trust in God's provision, as seen in Isaac's response to the conflicts over the wells. Isaac's experience serves as a reminder that God's blessings often come with challenges, but his faithfulness endures through them all. In the larger biblical narrative, Genesis 26 serves as a bridge between the stories of Abraham and Jacob, showing how God's covenant promises are passed down from generation to generation. Isaac's life, please subscribe my YouTube channel. I hope you like this video. Thank you.